try this one, Dr. Gardner.
Okay.
At this power, we see a probably shaved biopsy with a lot of inflammation, and a lot of things are kind of going through my head at this point. Differential would include an atypical lymphoid infiltrate.
Yep.
And it looks like there's some spongiosis. I can't really get to a diagnosis on this power, so I want to go a little closer and try to ascertain what type of cells are characterizing this infiltrate. And I see there's a lot of different cell types. There's EOs, there's lymphocytes, and then there are these larger cells that maybe have some reniform features, maybe some coffee bean-like type look.
Good.
So for that, I would think this could be a Langerhans cell histiocytosis, and I'd want to get stains such as S100, CD1A.
Excellent work. So yeah, this is Langerhans cell histiocytosis, I agree. From low power, I would not know right away what this is. I would definitely think of a lymphoma, or leukemia, something like that, because it's so dense and blue. Maybe a really exuberant bug bite reaction. I might think of a lot of things. But the one thing that Langerhans cell histiocytosis usually has is it usually has the papillary dermis filled with Langerhans cells. So that is kind of a unique feature. The other thing that usually fills the papillary dermis is mastocytosis. Okay, so those are two diseases that will give you an infiltrate that tends to pack the papillary dermis full of cells. And then it may extend well deeper into the dermis, but usually it starts with filling up the papillary dermis. So the two things that can help, well, three, we can do stains to help tell those two things apart. But one thing that helps, maybe it's on the other piece. Where was that? One thing that helps is that Langerhans cell histiocytosis not only fills the papillary dermis, but it also usually trickles up into the epidermis. It does not respect the border, the boundary between the dermis and the epidermis. And that makes sense because Langerhans cells normally live in the spinous layer of the epidermis. So they can freely cross over the basement membrane and go back and forth between the dermis and the epidermis. So that's something that Langerhans cells do and mast cells do not. The other thing is that cytologically, even though they both are cells that have like kind of oval nuclei and abundant pale cytoplasm, the big difference is the nuclear shape. In Langerhans cells, you get these bean shape or reniform or coffee bean shape or grooved nuclei. And in mast cells, you don't, you just get more like oval shape. And mast cells have granules, although they're not always easy to see. In Langerhans cells, you can't really see much in the way of granularity. Eosinophils are usually abundant in Langerhans histiocytosis, but you can have them in mastocytosis as well. Okay, so you can do immunostains to identify that these are indeed Langerhans cells, and so S100 will stain them usually. And people often teach Rosai-Dorfman and Langerhans cell histiocytosis together because they're both histiocytic processes that are S100 positive. But they don't really look anything alike otherwise. The way they present, the way they grow, usually Rosai-Dorfman's deep in the subcutis. You can occasionally have nodules in the dermis, but whereas Langerhans cells usually is in the papillary dermis, the shape of the nuclei is very different. So I can't remember a time where I've seriously considered Rosai-Dorfman and Langerhans in the same differential diagnosis on a real life case. So it's fine if you want to learn them together because they're both S100 positive, but just recognize that they really don't look alike at all. So if you're watching this, that's something that I often feel like we are teaching to trainees, but making them think that these two things could get confused with one another when really they don't. So yes, so the CD1A is a marker of Langerhans cells, and then Langerhans, CD207, is also a marker. And so Langerhans is actually a molecule that's involved in the production of Bierbeck granules, and that's why Langerhans cells have Bierbeck granules on electron microscopy. But usually we don't do electron microscopy for skin biopsies anymore, so you can just use Langerhans as a surrogate marker for Bierbeck granules. Okay, and this is a disease, as you remember from med school, that can have a lot of different presentations. Sometimes it involves the skin only. Sometimes it can involve the lungs, the bone, the skull base. There are different types of presentations, some of which is more indolent and some of which can be quite aggressive and problematic for the patient. So these patients need clinical workup to determine what type they have. And occasionally it will come up that you can have a rich infiltrate that it has abundant Langerhans cells, but might not be this abundant. And I've had cases before where I've been left wondering, is this Langerhans cell histiocytosis, or is this just spongiotic dermatitis with a bunch of Langerhans cell microabscesses? So that's only occasionally has that happened, but I have had times where I've struggled to know how much is enough to call Langerhans histiocytosis. So one thing that is supposedly helpful is that Langerhans histiocytosis usually is positive for cyclin D1 by immunohistochemistry, whereas normal reactive Langerhans cells are not. So I have not, since I learned that, I've not actually encountered a case that to test that out on that I can recall. Oh, I guess I have, but I don't think I ended up doing it because it was like in the bone and it was very straightforward. But in any case, a good friend of a dermpath who's a friend of mine, Ben Wood from Australia, he taught me that little pearl and said that it works really well, and he's used it in practice successfully. The other thing is that Langerhans cell histiocytosis often has activating mutation in the BRAF gene, just like melanoma, the V600E mutation. And I think there may be other variations, but that's the one I think that is most common. You can look that up and double check me on it. So that's the other thing is you can do BRAF mutation analysis. You should not have a BRAF mutation in benign reactive Langerhans cells, right? So if mutated, that supports Langerhans. I would point out that there are other histiocytoses, particularly Erdheim-Chester disease, which I have never actually seen in real life, but my understanding is that it looks different. It does not look like Langerhans cells. It looks more like foamy histiocytes, but it also can have BRAF mutations. So BRAF can be really helpful in supporting a diagnosis, but not all cases have it. So if BRAF is negative, that doesn't totally exclude the possibility. All right. So this is a great example of Langerhans cell histiocytosis, and I did pull up some pictures here to show you from other cases that we have a little bit better cytologic features. So these are some where you can see extensive upward scatter of Langerhans cells, and guess what? If you did S100, you might think this is melanoma. The kind of epithelioid, there's quote-unquote pagetoid spread, but they will be negative for SOX10. So just remember, these are one of the things that can be S100 positive, but SOX10 negative. So, and here's a really good example of the cytology with the bean-shaped nuclei. So depending on if you cut it in kind of cross-section, it looks like a bean, like a kidney bean or a kidney shape. If you flip the cell 90 degrees, it will have more of a kind of coffee bean with a linear groove sort of configuration, which I think you can kind of see like in this guy right here. And here's some that have grooves in them on this case. There's some kind of linear grooves. So those are some, oh wait, there's a good one down here that is kind of grooved. So that's a nice example of some other pictures of Langerhans histiocytosis. All right.